Hi everyone, welcome to Money and Me by the Coin Republic. This is a podcast where we get some of the top guests from the Web3 crypto and blockchain space. I am Varuni, your host and the editor in chief at the Coin Republic. And at the Coin Republic, we try to do only the best coverage of the top topics of discussion in the Web3 crypto and blockchain space. And today we have with us a really interesting guest. We have Alvin from Zero2Launch, and he's here to talk about all things crazy that are going on in the Web3 space at the moment. Hi, Alvin. Super excited and super stoked to be talking to you. How are you doing?
Hi, Varuni. I'm doing well. Thank you very much for the invite to the show. I look forward to have a discussion on everything and anything crypto, or these days, people like to refer them as Web 3.0.
Yeah.
Uh, I look forward to that conversation, and I'm sure that we will end up, with something, some good takeaway at the end. Go ahead.
Absolutely. That is always the agenda that when we end this show, there's a lot to take away in terms of education, in terms of your experience that our viewers can take away or learn from. And when we look at your experience, your career, it has spanned across over, I suppose, a decade, and you've had a really impressive background with Interpublic Group, Omnicorn Group, and as well Google. So you worked with some of the top brands in the Web2 space, and then you've had your significant time in the Web 3.0 space as well. What inspired your transition into this rabbit hole of a space? Because I like to call it a rabbit hole because once you're in the Web3 space, it is really difficult to sort of pull back from it. So, what led to this transition from Web2 to Web3? If you can talk a little bit about your journey at Google, Interpublic, and Omnicom, that would be great.
Right. I think they are. I don't have a. I mean, I don't have a specific, reason why, that conversion, right? Or how did I even crawl into the rabbit hole? But I certainly believe that getting into Web 3, you get younger. So if anyone is looking for an anti-aging potion, get into Web 3, crawl into the rabbit hole, and then you probably be able to, knock off 20 years from your whatever that your age may be. So, but I mean, joke aside, but I'm definitely it's refreshing, yeah, because you have the opportunity to mingle around with very young people, including yourself. And I've seen and met several people, both offline and also online. People in the Web 3 space, and mostly either they are run or even managed by very young people, or championed by really really solid people in the Web 3 space. So again, I don't have a specific reason how I even got into, but certainly there was a period in my entire journey, right, that I've always been very curious, right? I've lived through that curiosity that I graduated with a law degree. I came into, I worked in a law firm. I got out and I decided that I want to embark on this, this technology trail even in the mid 90s, which is really at the beginning of the entire, what we call the internet era. And that was the main reason why I actually want to get into the tech space. But I don't have a specific direction because I never knew what was a direction then, other than the fact that I need to get into the tech space. And of course, at that time, it was really at an internet era where the internet was very slow by comparison to now. But at that point, it was really an eye opener because at that point, there was nothing like the internet, even though it was over a 9.6K modem. But it was really, really an eye opener, and that really sparked my entire, got me going, and I really need to get into the space. And from that onwards, right, I don't have a love for any specific technology. I look at tech being a tool, right? And having said that, right, it's not that I don't like specific technology, but I look at all that being a tool to really ease our life. And ultimately, technology are meant to do one thing. It's meant to be a tool so that we lead a much more better life, right? Whether that's going to be buying something, going somewhere, researching for information, and payment and so forth, right? So technology are meant to do all that, right? Because prior to all that, everything was very offline. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't like the idea of offline, but the online brings a whole dimension, and that has led me to be looking at several technology from as the mobile internet. Before PC, before mobile, there was PC, right? And the entire evolution that went from social media, e-commerce, and payment, fintech, and now, of course, we're looking at Web 3.0. Of course, there's a lot of talk and implementation deployment on AI, and of course, in the future, you've got autonomous car and smart cities and what have you. So we are going through the entire, everything is accelerated, right? So it's very fascinating. And Web3 just so happened when I got out from all the corporates, the big names that you were talking about, the big brands. I had the opportunity. I'm very blessed that I got the opportunity to be working with some of the best brands in the world and some of the best people that actually work in those companies. And I had the luxury to be also working with clients that gave me this opportunity, that created this more curiosity that I want to embark onto something new. Because for the last 15 years, right, my focus was very much consulting in the marketing technology business. So that would be advertising, that would be social media, that would be e-commerce, everything digital, the entire digital transformation spectrum that I was advising my client. And that was everything was, people regard that as the old internet, or not the old, the current internet, the Web 2.0. And then the entire new spectrum, the new era, the Web 3.0. And start looking at decentralization and so forth, decentralized money, decentralized wallet, and so forth. Right, it makes it very fascinating because that you see, we're going from one bucket, right, of Web 1.0, 2.0, 3, and 3.0. That makes it very, very interesting. So I'm really at this juncture where I had the opportunity again at my age, not so young, but as I've said, Web3, I'm very blessed because it's probably the best anti-aging potion, right? That makes me feel a lot younger, and embarking on a very exciting journey. I don't know what it will look like. People always ask, what's like 5 years, 10 years. I can't tell. And now with the thing called AI, right? That's accelerating everything. Makes it very hard to even do any forecast at this point of time. But certainly, we are living in a very interesting era where we're going to see a lot of development, not just in Web3, but technology as a whole, and how in general our life gets better at the end, ultimately.
Absolutely. You're right when you say that we're in a technological shakeup. We're in an era where there's a lot of technology shakeup happening from 2G where we started. In fact, the days of the early internet, World Wide Web, to now when we're talking about Web 3.0, not just talking about, in fact, the days of talking are gone. Now are the days of showcasing. And as of what I understand, you have two ventures at the moment, Zero2Launch and NASDAQ. If you can tell us a little bit about what went behind the inception of these two ventures. You mentioned about your expertise in marketing, advertising, and bringing together the collaborative technologies and also bringing them on the front of community of communication through your marketing advertising experience in the tech space. How did that help you in founding these two ventures, and what is Zero2Launch and NASDAQ?
Zero to Launch is actually a fund that was actually started between me and my partner. And the entire, I mean, the objective was really to get into Web3, not just in investing into Web3 companies, but also being able to incubate. And NASDAQ is a company that we have incubated out of Zero to Launch. So think of Zero to Launch as a VC to fund anything Web 3.0. And NASDAQ is very close to our heart because we literally incubated from scratch by ourselves. So this is not like incubation that we have worked with a third party, right, where we help them to incubate. This is like we incubated from scratch. We created a team, we created an entire white paper and so forth, and then took took the project to token launch and so forth. So very close at heart that till today we are still managing it very closely to us. Of course, now there's another company called MetaFight, that we are also looking to incubate, where it's more what I would term as an investment bank in the Web3 world, right? Nasdaq, on the other hand, right? Nasdaq is on the other hand is a regulated real world asset marketplace. So think of it as a decentralized exchange for security tokens, right? There's a difference between security tokens versus utility, right? All
Right.
the tokens that you see on most exchanges, they are all utility token
Mhm.
that exist on Nasdaq. They're security because they are all asset.
So, as Web3 entrepreneurs, we're trying to fill certain gaps in this space. There has to be an agenda behind the kind of business that we do. And with MetaFi that you mentioned, and of course, NASDAQs, I'm sure that there are certain gaps in this space that you're trying to fill. What are those gaps that you saw in the Web3 space that led to you founding NASDAQs or MetaFi? And how far have you come from that goal where you initially started off from?
Now, I'm not trying to game change anything. I don't profess to be like Elon Musk says. Oh, I want to change the world. I'm not changing the world. I saw it as an opportunity, more of a problem. Now, when you build startup, right? Startup has always been built by identifying a problem, right, and trying identifying a very painful problem, right, a pain point, super pain point, and trying to solve that pain point. So I think Nasdaq is also doing exactly that. We saw the pain point in projects in the real world raising money. Now, over the years, right, a lot of crypto projects, right, have been raising a lot of money in the crypto world. So that could be a startup that does DeFi, that does GameFi, that are metaverse, raising lots of money in the decentralized world, and they have raised tons of money. But and the fact is that in the real world, there are lots of companies, right, also wants to raise money, right, but they are raising in a traditional world, right. So I'm trying to create a breach for these companies in the real world to be able to tap the opportunity to raise fund in the decentralized world. Of course, the difference now is that we want to do it regulated because a lot of this asset that sits on the real world, they're all regulated. Like your real estate, your properties, they're all regulated, right? Your security that you're hanging on, the derivative, the bonds, all that, they're all regulated.
Yeah.
So by moving this asset across to the decentralized world, it's not as if the regulations just disappear, right? So you need to be able to make sure that when you move the asset across, you need to be compliant when you offer this security token, right, to the crypto community. It's a mixture of Web3 and also Web2 investors, right?
Okay.
So I think it's a perfect bridge to bring real world asset to the crypto world. And at the same time, to be able to onboard a lot of Web 2.0 investors into the Web3 world. So we
Yeah.
saw it as an opportunity. We saw it as a problem, and we're trying to fix that, right? So so think of Nasdaq as the exchange. So think of it like they are the stock exchange, right? Then you
Mhm.
got MetaFi, right? MetaFi does the work like an investment bank, like Goldman Sachs, and that's their job. Because in the real world, when you do an IPO, right, you need an investment bank, right, to advise, guide you, and underwrite the entire project, the entire company, and taking them to the stock exchange.
Yeah.
Similarly, in the decentralized, in the Web3 world, right, you equally need, right, a company like MetaFi to advise, guide, and also help you to run the entire process before setting yourself ready, right, for token launch in the security world.
Yeah. I
That's
I see
trying to
it.
like make it very simple. So at least I'm not because the reality is that if I try and explain this in a very technical term, nobody understands like what the hell is an STO, right? So I'm trying to explain by using the traditional world and then how do I then bring this across, right, into the Web3 world?
Yeah. No, that made perfect sense. And it was great that you were able to decode all of that in such simple terms for our audiences. And I do understand that you have been inspired by tech and you've been around tech all your life, trying to understand where technology is coming from, which direction is it going in. And I would like to believe that you are a follower of new trends and innovations in the tech space. Of course, we in the Web3 space we saw the NFT wave, then we saw the metaverse wave, and the last couple of years we've seen AI take over. Of course, we'd like to think of all of these things as more than just buzzwords, and I do believe in a lot of emerging technologies. According to you, what are some of your top picks for emerging technologies that you feel have a lot of potential for impact in the world at large? Are there any trends or innovations that you're particularly excited about? And if so, what would they be?
I think right now, now there's a difference between a real trend versus hype, right? Of course, hype is also part of a trend, right?
Hmm.
Now, some of the terms that you mentioned, like in the crypto world, right? The NFTs,
Hmm.
yeah, the RWA, many of these stuff that exist in the crypto world or the Web 3.0, they are called narrative
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
it started off as a narrative that's being circulated and also shared by a lot of people in social media. And then you usually get a pump, and then nothing happens, right? After a dump,
Yeah.
right? That's in the crypto world. Now, in the real world, things actually get done. AI isn't just AI isn't just a narrative.
Yeah.
AI is being powered by companies like OpenAI, right?
Correct.
They
Yeah.
are like Meta, who is also in that business, like Google with Gemini in that business. There are so many players, right, that rides on that entire generative AI era, right? Well, we're in a space where money is being poured a lot and things are being developed, right? And when I say develop, I'm sure you have used all these applications, right, from ChatGPT to Mid Journey, and you name
Yeah.
them all, right? All these are brilliant development that has really gone through many updates already. And that's why you see when you look at the ChatGPT now, it's a lot more powerful than what it was 18 months ago. And it's accelerating. Now it's very even hard to predict. I mean, I think Sam Altman will also find it difficult to predict. He can only tell you that it's going to get better with GPT-5, much better, right? And it's hard to tell how much better we're going to get, right? And the aim is to reach AGI, right, where artificial general intelligence is almost as good as human. We're not there yet, but we're not that far out, right? So when you look at all these technologies that's being brought into space, and AI is not just changing one sector; it's
Hmm.
impacting an entire industry. Now, I came from advertising, right? Now, we're in advertising. We have been looking at optimization, ad optimization for a long time, and it's been around for a long time now. And
Yeah.
some form of artificial intelligence was actually being introduced even then already, maybe 10 years ago. But now we're
Yeah.
getting better, right? That you can feed more data to optimize to get a much better advertising outcome and result at the end, the performance at the end. And now being applied right to industry. So that would change and game change productivity, right? And AI going into a robot, right? That gives a then now you got Tesla Optimus,
Hmm.
right? Right then,
Right.
so AI is being implemented and deployed in many sectors already, and that would
Hmm.
game change a lot of things and businesses and would disrupt businesses as well. Well, a lot of people talk about great that we're going to have a lot of AI. At the same time, we have to live the fact, right, that there's going to be a lot replacement of jobs. Many people are going to end up with no job because if you do not retool, reskill, relearn, you're going to be out of jobs, right?
Yeah.
Coders of today, which are the core of the entire tech business, including Web3, right? In the future, you'll need coders.
Yeah.
All you need, right, is human language to tell the machine. What do you want to
Yeah.
develop, right? Similarly, like to how people were coding HTML 25 years ago to create a website. These days, nobody code HTML. So similarly, I think a lot of development in programming, right, in the future, right, coders, you don't need them because the machine will do better coding than you already, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of jobs are going to disappear. So the future of work is going to look very different from what it is right now, right? And if we do not retool, reskill, or even relearn new stuff, I think many of us are going to be out of. So when you look at technology, right, a lot of these are going to impact. But having said that, the technology are supposed to improve and make things better, right? It's supposed to be able to drive your car, so you can spend time doing other things, right? So technologies are there to help us to make our life better. But at the same time, while it's also creating new opportunity, it's going to disrupt, right, the old businesses, the old processes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Technology is definitely here to disrupt, and you, while painting a beautiful picture of the future, did say that a lot of jobs will be lost. And this is a constant debate that we see around AI or generative AI as to how people would have to grow with the tech and learn with the tech in order to fit into the larger narrative. How do you think? How do you think people will be able to save their jobs? What are some jobs that, let's say, would not be affected, and what do you think would be the best way for people to grow in the Web3 space or in the tech space at large as the tech grows?
I think the general rule is this.
Yeah.
I think the general is most jobs will be affected.
Yeah.
Most jobs will be disrupted. Most. I don't. I don't want you to go and think of some jobs may be affected, some are not, some are more. Obviously, there's some more riskier, some less. But in general, most jobs are going to be disrupted. So the advice that I always tell people, I mean, I won't use the word advice. I mean, I constantly tell people that you need to do three things. You must have the ability, right, to learn, unlearn, and relearn,
Yeah.
right? So learning is important. So that's constant, right? You have to consistently learn, and because things are moving so quickly, right? You need to be able to unlearn at some point because you need to like take out those stuff that you have learned, and these are outdated. We need to take them out. That's why you need to unlearn it, right? And then follow by relearning new stuff again. And this is if you can do this consistently, right? That will be all you need, right, to move forward,
Yeah.
to stay relevant. And many jobs can be impacted. And the job that will likely to be impacted at the earliest is any job that involve repetition. Same thing
Yeah.
all over. So factory job, driving, right? Any job that's repetition, repetitive work, right, are going to be the one that's going to disappear quite quickly, right? And anything that you need to climb, you need to climb the value chain. You need to be able to do a lot more things that involve critical thinking, creativity, right? These
Yeah.
jobs are less likely. I'm not saying they're not likely, right? They're less likely because I think at the end of the day, right, machines are there to help us, right? And the function of them, right, is to get smarter so that they can help us better, right? And our
Right.
job, right, is to be much smarter than them. And the only way that we can be is that to do a lot of critical thinking, and that's not
Absolutely.
easy. That's hard. So the future generation live in a very very difficult world. The
Yeah.
reality is that we are very. I mean, I'm a lot more fortunate because I live in an era where things are a lot more simpler, right? The new
Yeah.
generation will have to live through a world where it's so competitive, right? I remember in those days when I had when I took a look at Google search, right? I said, "Wow, shit, man!
Mhm.
Everything is on the internet, right? I don't need,
Right.
I don't, all the informations are all condensed, right, within Google, and and
Mhm.
and and you start to think information is king, right? Actually, now that you think about it, right, information isn't king; it's given.
Right.
And not only that it's given, you can get ChatGPT, right? If you prompt it rightly, it'll give you an entire report, right? So that again, shit, suddenly, right? Information not only is given, even reporting, analysis, and all that stuff given again.
Yeah.
So you need to step up. because technology is gonna like eliminate. It's gonna eliminate a lot of jobs around along the way, right? So you gotta be
Yeah.
you just need to continue to raise to the top. I think that's a that unfortunately that's a painful part, right?
Yeah, that is true. You are right about the disruption that we will see. And of course, we do live in a lot easier times if we talk about tech and how easy life is for a lot of employees, employers. I'm sure you have had your fair share of working with a lot of businesses, enterprises that you've helped them, where you've helped them grow or um, raise money. And if you could talk about your experience working with entrepreneurs in the Web3 space, what are some of the biggest challenges that startups have faced, and how does your firm Zero2Launch help them in the back end? And of course, with your sort of expertise, how do you sort of navigate the challenges, and what are some of those challenges that startups are facing at the moment?
Wow, lots of challenges, lots of challenges.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
sure.
uh, maybe I just want to like maybe
Mhm.
craft it in a much simpler way, right? Is that
Yeah.
the reality is that to start something on your own is very hard. That's
Mhm.
true. I mean the barrier to doing startup is a lot lower than what it was 20 years ago, right? But and having said that, it's probably 1,000 times harder to succeed in startup than 20 years ago. So while it's lower, it's a lot more harder, and it's not for everyone. It's tough. 98% failure rate. That's a that's a failure rate in startup. 98%. So your chance of falling within that 2% bucket is no
Yeah.
joke. It's difficult. So
Yeah.
so anyone who really wants to get into starting up something on your, you need to think hard, right?
Mhm.
Taking into consideration of what I was saying, AI and all that stuff, right? Uh, while it's low barrier, are you really solving a problem, right? A real problem, and is that problem a big
Sure.
problem, right? And whether you have got the right team to go and solve. And ultimately, when we invest into a company, we're not investing into ideas. Everyone can have an idea, right? We're investing in like an individual. We are investing into people, and the people that we're looking for, right? Most of the time, I am looking for like a. I used to like the coin this term of a street fighter, and and the reason why I coined this term the street fighter. If you have played the game, it's an arcade game, Street Fighter. So the notion of Street Fighter is you have to you're looking for survival of the fittest, right? You're trying to find someone who will fight without surrendering. That's a street fighter. And if you can find a person, regardless of what idea that he has on his mind, right, he will continue to survive because that's the kind of quality that you want to find. Most of the failures, besides the partnership failure, most of the time the business don't die. It's
Yeah.
that decides that I had enough. I'm just going to take a break. And most of the time, it's because the founders decided to give up. So you need to find really strong-hearted people who are willing to push forward. And most of the time, it's always easy to say no than to say yes. Yeah? It's always easy to give up than to
Yeah.
carry on. So finding the right people, finding the right knowledge between founders. Now, 80% of the time, right, a company fails because of founders. For founders or for partners, right? Find
Yeah.
someone who also have the strong heart as you, who are willing to move forward for a long time. And at the same time, never find people who are like you. Always find founders who are unlike you because they complement you. And know them well enough to make that assessment whether they are going to be with you for a long time. Because
Yeah.
80% of the time a business fails is because of founders. So you need to correct it. So business did not fail because of the idea was not great, right?
Hmm.
Many startup. I mean, if you look at a lot of very successful startups of today, most of them have pivoted from the original business. Not
Right.
all, right, stood all the way with one business model right to IPO, right?
Hmm.
that most founder would have able to. So it's not the idea; it's a founder, right? It's the ability to be able to drive your team, right? Inspire your team, and then get the right people to execute well, and then
Yeah.
market it very well. And to get all that to work like a symphony band clearly is no easy task, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. Uh, Entrepreneurs, not just in the Web3 space, but any entrepreneur faces a lot of difficulty. And we spoke about so many challenges that startups face day in and day out. Another big challenge that a lot of startups face, and probably because they've not gotten in touch with Zero2Launch, is funding. Funding is one thing that a lot of Web3 startups, Web2 startups, or entrepreneurs generally struggle with. So they do tend to have a great idea and the passion and the right kind of founders, but when it comes to funding, there is a lot of struggle or friction that startups sort of face. What are some of your key evaluation pointers that you always sort of analyze before onboarding a startup or an entrepreneur? And I'm sure that your experience would help a lot of founders, startups understand what exactly investors are looking for. Because when it comes to what investors want and what are those key things that they are pinpicking from entrepreneurs, what are they? You already mentioned that you place your bets more on the entrepreneur and less on the business or the idea. But other than that, if you have to do your key evaluation and if there's a checklist that you follow, what would be that, Alvin?
I mean, this checklist is not it's not like a one size fits all, right? Uh, I think I've covered some of the points earlier. Now, now when it comes to funding, right? Entrepreneurs should be like exploring funding by going after the low hanging fruit, right? I don't expect to like talk to five VCs and then voila, we got all covered, right? Start with the low hanging fruit. Go after your friends. Go after your rich uncle, rich auntie, and rich parents, right? If you have one, right? And start with them, right? And that's your low hanging fruit, right? So if you do that right, you should be able to get some money. I'm sure, right? If you can't even get money from your friends, from your dad, from your mom, from your rich uncle and auntie, something is wrong somewhere, right? So if you are not able to drive funding even from those low hanging fruit, VCs is considered slightly on the high. These fruits are pretty, stacked pretty high. So if you can't even get that sorted out, right? I guarantee you would have a lot of time, right, trying to raise money from the VC. Now, the other thing is that now when I look at entrepreneurs, right, the one thing I always look at them is that when I go through now, beside the business model, I mean, you mentioned earlier that I don't care about business model. I do care. Not that I don't care. It's just that my priority is actually stacked on team first, right? Now, when I look at some of these are the metrics I look at, right? Would be uh, how much, right? How much are these now? When you look at how deep these people will go, is how much money, right? They are willing to invest. So money may not just be financial money. That could be your time as well, right? Now, if you see entrepreneurs putting, he's like almost all in, right? Literally all in, and that's not just him, but also his co-founders and his entire team. You know that he has to win badly. Now, if you can smell that the team needs to win badly, that's one point that I always like pick. I now sometimes most of the time, yeah, they want to raise money. They have got dream and aspiration and so forth. But yeah, I mean, yeah, they they haven't reached the point where they need to win badly. They want to win. But some teams you can really see that they believe in what they're doing and they really want to win badly. And you want to be able to smell that. If I can smell that, right, that will be one company that I want to invest in. Because most companies when they come to me, right, they'll drop me their business plan, they will drop me their team, they'll drop me then they will go to a call, and most of the time you get them explaining and going through the business. And most of the business plans are very similar. I mean, I'm not talking about the the idea, the entire flow is very similar because I'm sure they must have like look through templates and whatever. So very similar. And at the end, it's always going to be a case like uh, we want to be the number one of this, and we have got all these people supporting us already. I mean, the truth is that I'm not trying to look for someone who's going to build the first rocket to space. I'm not. I want to find out whether you have that capability and the know-how and the desire to really build that rocket first, right? I mean, Elon Musk wasn't the first person who built a rocket to space, but he did it. He did it so well, right? Because he really wanted to make it work, and he's putting $80 million, 100 million of his money, right, from his previous investment into a company called SpaceX. So to him, it's make or break,
Right.
so if you can find someone who are really putting everything in, is make or break for him. That's a company that's worth investing in. Because I know if I lose money, man. But if you lose your pants. You lose everything. You cannot lose. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
you want to find entrepreneur because these are very obsessive entrepreneur startup founders, right? And they want to win. And if they want to win badly, right, it's always they will make or break at the end, and that's what I want to find them. And I want to search for these companies, right? Because to the VCs, right, we are just going to lose money, right? But to them, they lose everything. So it's a good bet. It's a good bet.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That makes sense. That does make a lot of sense. When we talk about challenges, however, another challenge other than funding, of course, that entrepreneurs usually face is regulation and compliance, especially in the Web3 space, as governments are trying to better understand this growing technology, be it DLT or blockchain. They are trying to frame better regulations around it, but we're still a long way from the sort of fluid global regulations that we aim to have. Um, which which geography, Alvin, are you based in? If you could talk a little bit about regulations there, and how do you guys assist startups, if at all, with regulation, compliance? How do you picture the global narrative for regulations to be? And do you at all expect it to get better in the next couple of years?
I think regulations is already here. Is It depends on where you're located, right?
Right.
So there are some jurisdiction more friendlier than others. You get like Dubai, very friendly. Most countries around Asia Pacific, like even Hong Kong and Singapore, they have strict regulation, but they are friendly, right? Of course, Dubai being the most friendliest. And so again, depending where you're located, but it is very clear from the recent SEC's guidance and all that. You can see that US is taking a very strict approach as digital asset is concerned. So regulation is coming. Uh, and be mindful that you can assume all countries will have their own regulations, whether that's going to be in India, whether that's going to be in Asia, in Malaysia, Singapore, they will have their own regulations. Each of them very similar. I don't expect all of them to be very different, but I'm sure they are all designed and made with consideration of the local market,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
But overall, I think in principle, very similar, right? All out there to protect the investors and also providing guidance and also licensing on how do you then issue security tokens and tokens, right? Now, we need regulation simply because we want to make sure that companies are legit, right? That the legitimacy is important because it protects the investors. Now, if we look at the Wild Wild West, the current Wild Wild West crypto world, where there's rug pull, right? There's scams and all kinds of stuff. And it is what it is because it was built in the Wild Wild West. So what do you expect, right? That's it's a Wild Wild West. Therefore, you have to do your own research, and sometimes, like it or not, you need to be scanned and all that
Yeah,
to learn.
yeah,
Unfortunately, right? Because if you are willing to get into that space, right? Be prepared, right? And no matter how smart you may be, right? The scams and rug pulls will teach you smarter, right? Well, you be wiser after a few rounds. I'm not saying I'm encouraging it, but that's a reality. And the regulations are there to basically build legitimacy into token launches, right? Right now, there's no law. You can create and issue new meme token, right? You can create whatever token that you want under the sky, under the sky, and that's fine, right? But in due time, I think a lot of these uh, 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 countries, right, including US, China, some countries are very strict, like China, no cryptocurrency,
Right.
no project, right? I think there will be some countries that will allow you to do it, but you need to register, right, with certain authority that you want to do a token launch and making that token available to, let's say, a specific country, for example,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's great. If you ask me, right, I think it will be good if there's some form of registration, right? But again, there's lack of clarity at this point of time. But I think
Mm,
this is changing. This is changing. If you look at the regulation, even in Europe, right, the digital asset regulation is already there, right? Question is how do you implement them, right? So if you look at any now, my advice to any startup in the Web3 space, you got to be mindful, right?
mhm.
Your business model, how would regulation impact your business, and you need to be mindful. Do you need a license and all that? I constantly challenge some of these startups. I mean, are you looking at regulations? Are you looking at when you start to take these assets into your pool, right? Isn't that managing asset? Isn't that taking deposit? In most countries, you probably need an asset management license,
Right.
right? So I think you need to be mindful. I mean, you have to move away from that wild west if
Mm,
you're looking to raise money, right? And be mindful. A lot of asset that you're touching on, there's already regulations that govern them if it's a rural asset, there's existing traditional regulation that governs them. So moving it to Web3 doesn't mean that suddenly, right, that asset there's no regulation. You know what I'm saying? You got to the reality is that regulation is here. You need to be mindful. You need to find out from a lawyer, get advice. You know what you need to do, whether you need to apply for licenses or whether you need to get your lawyer to at least provide you sufficient at least
mm,
consulting and also advice so that you are mindful of what you're doing in your space.
right.
I mean, there are always going to be utility token that does not need, but
Mm,
I'm of the opinion that there should be some form of registration, right? If you're doing a token launch, because
absolutely.
that token launch, right, is being offered to you know people I mean investors all over the place, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
some form of registration will help because at least it will build some legitimacy, and also at the same time, right, knowing where to track and point fingers. You know what I'm saying? Right now, there's none, right? And you can and 98% of those meme tokens that are being issued and also being listed, right, on the decentralized exchanges, 98% of them are scams.
Yeah.
98%. So when proper regulation with no clarity in place, the big boys won't come. Your mom and pop who are the retailers won't want to invest into these tokens, right? So in order for things to move into mainstream with great adoption, you need regulation, period. And that's how the old
Mm,
world works, right? When regulation comes, then things are more settled and there's a regulator so that at least have a recourse. We cannot live in a world where there's no recourse. And
yeah.
that's how the world functioned for the last, at least 5,000 years, right?
Makes sense. We have seen a constant evolution, of course. Here's hoping that regulations continue to evolve and positively for entrepreneurs in the Web3 space. But when we talk about evolution and when we talk about evolution of the Web3 landscape or the tech at large, how do you think is it going to evolve in the next half a decade? And what sort of a role do you envision both your brands playing in that sort of evolution? You already mentioned about how almost all the jobs will be taken away and job sector would be affected. Of course, these emerging technologies would tend to take over. But how do you envision the future, Alvin? Is it a techie future or is it your regular old everyday future?
uh, it's very hard. There are so many future reports that you can look at and that you can read, right? Depending which one you read, or forecast differently, right? And it's so hard to forecast. I mean, the only thing I can tell you, cars are going to be driven by machine, right? Cars are going to
Right.
be, and then you're going to have robots, serving the in the production line, maybe even a maid serving you as well. So a lot of work that can be done by machine will do it. Period. Right?
Right.
So automation, i.e., goes into everything, right?
Right.
AI, everything. So you can imagine the world ahead is that everything powered by AI. Machines are good. Anything that can be automated will be automated, right? Streets, cars on the street, and even potentially, I mean, planes could already fly on their own, right? Like
Right.
maybe in the future, you even have, now trains are already being driven automatically,
Driverless.
right?
Right.
So you live in a and of course cities are going to be smart cities, right? Powered by AI that's going to run the cities more efficiently, lesser traffic jam, and people more spending more time at home, spending more time, with their family because a lot of their works now are done, by machine. I anticipate in a world where there's lesser work done by people, more work done by robots and through automation, and people who have more time to do something else. Again, these are just top because if AI continue to proliferate, right? I think that's the end result, and I suppose that we all will be supposedly happier. It's supposed to be right. I don't hope that we live in a world that we will be like what we are right now. Everyone look at most people are antisocial, playing with their phones and so forth, right? So I do hope that more positive outlook for the outcome with better technology. We have got better living.
Absolutely. And just before we wrap our show today, is there any advice that you have for aspiring entrepreneurs that are looking to launch a startup in the Web3 or crypto space? And are there any pitfalls that they can and should avoid in this space?
Uh, I think my advice to entrepreneurs is that as always, starting up is really really tough, right? Unless if you don't have the steel of heart or the heart of steel, right? uh,
Right.
and and don't do it. I mean, there are a lot of ways to make a living and do well in life. Like most people work for others, and that's fine, right? Only do it because you really feel that you basically have what it takes. You have got the right team, right? You got the right team, right? You got the right co-founders, to ride it out with you, and make sure, right? You set aside some amount of money to at least kickstart it and build an MVP around it, right? Don't expect VC to throw money to you just because you have a piece of white paper or even a business plan. And don't expect VC to throw money even if you have an MVP. Build some traction. Bootstrap. I always think that startup that bootstrap clearly demonstrate, right, they really want to make it, right?
Right.
Right. So build something, demonstrate something, show traction before you go and raise, right? These days, raising money is a lot harder than before because VCs are now a lot smarter already, right? So
Yeah.
they know a lot of people come to them for money, easy money. I think gone were the days of easy money. You really
Mm,
need to demonstrate that what you have built has traction. Not that
right.
they're looking for people to make money now, right, with the development, but at least that demonstrate a path to profitability at some point, right? And also, I think I also want to harp on this all the time. Now, it's not just starting up. Life is not just about starting up. There's beyond starting up, right? It's to stay relevant, right? Regardless of whether you end up doing startup on your own, it's the idea of you need to stay relevant. And whether staying relevant, not it's not about young people staying relevant. Even old people need to stay relevant. So the continuous need of again, I use the three term: learn, unlearn, and relearn. Very important.
Yeah.
We all need to do this regardless of age, right? Don't expect when you're young, right, you'll be able to catch up. Now, if
Yeah.
if you compromise, right? even at young age, not going to make it, right? So
Right.
you need to practice that in mind. Keep in mind, I mean, the learn, relearn, and unlearn and relearn is actually my tagline.
Yeah.
You need to formulate your own methodology to stay
Hmm.
relevant because the world is
Absolutely.
changing very rapidly. If you don't do that right, you will be completely outdated in no time.
Makes sense. So pull up your socks and be relevant, and of course, always stay curious. And that might as well be your journey to success. Very wise words right there by Alvin Foo. Thank you so much, Alvin, for joining us today. Big shout out to you and your team for making this possible. And here's hoping that we do have an optimistic future, not just in the Web3 space, but for humanity at large. Once again, thank you so much for joining us today at Money and Me podcast by the Coin Republic. This is me signing off.